Um, we are going to be recording this just so to let everybody know. We'll be monitoring the chat, and that way Anne can give her presentation at the end. We'll ask some questions. So, um, if Anne, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then it's all you.
Thanks, Kim. I am truly honored to be here and hope this presentation will be helpful for all of you. Yesterday, I was at a conference of oil and gas companies on this topic. And at the beginning of the session, they said, how many of you in the room have been affected by someone in your family or close friends with suicide? And over half the room raised their hands, including me. So it is a real issue that I'm talking about today, and I'm really glad to be able to share important information. I'm going to start by talking about statistics, and then I am going to move on to what we see with risk factors, how we might handle somebody who's dealing, this is a broad overview, handle somebody who's in a risk situation, moving on to professional help and then postvention if someone does commit suicide, ways to handle it. And I hope I'm going to provide a lot of resources. I have also sent a listing of resources which will be circulated to you all after this session. So I'm going to put up my little PowerPoint here and okay. Again, broad overview. So what we know is that over 49,000 people die by suicide annually. And I'm putting died by in red because there is an attempt right now to change the language from committed suicide to died by suicide. And the reason for many people to express this is for us to move away from language that sounds more legal and more like it was at their own hands and it's their fault. And they feel like this is a better way to express it. I will tell you, yesterday at the conference, I heard committed suicide many times, but there is an effort to say died by suicide. There's one death every 11 minutes. 12.8 million people seriously consider it, 3.7 million make a plan, and 1.5 million attempted. These are out of 2023 Centers for Disease Control. Some of our races have disproportionately high numbers with suicide, American Indians and Alaskan Natives being the highest, whites, Hawaiians, and then moving down the list. We also see differences in gender with the suicide rate for males. It's about 3.8% higher than females. However, females attempt 2 to 3 times more unsuccessfully. What we know is that men tend to succeed more with using lethal means. And we know that certain industries are more at risk. So in 2021, they looked back over the decades and noticed that there are 33% more suicides now through various work-related job, people who are job, employment eligible, that level, than there were 2 decades ago. And we are sitting on top of one of the industries that is most at risk, and it's oil and gas. And then, needless to say, construction. We've got building going on everywhere in Houston. So why are those industries most at risk? What we know is that a lot of the boots on the ground fellows and ladies are way out in the hinterlands. They're drilling in remote places, maybe in the middle of the ocean, maybe up in Alaska or in the Canadian tundra, different areas where they are isolated. It gets dark early. There's a lot of drinking. They're separated from their families for often long periods of time, 6 weeks, out there, and then maybe a couple of weeks or maybe even months out there. And lots of divorce going on. And it tends to be a really macho culture where people don't share. So those people are more at risk with this kind of isolation. And that's what was being addressed at the summit yesterday. We also know that there are differences by age group. So you would think that most of the suicide might happen younger. I don't know why I would think that. But in fact, many, many older people are committing suicide. This is, again, rates per 100,000. We also know that teens are really struggling right now, and that teen suicide rates dramatically increased prior to 2020, but have now begun to decrease, thankfully. It is the second leading cause of death for preteens and the third leading for ages 15 through 19. And one of the scariest things that's come out recently is the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which shows that almost 10% of our high school students are reporting attempting suicide. 10%, with 20% having considered it. And we also know that there are vulnerable populations like the LGBTQ community that are definitely way more at risk because of all the discrimination going on. So really scary, statistics with youth. And a recent one also said 40% of teens report persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. So we're going to talk a little bit about what might be going on. One of the teens that has made the news is Adam Rain. You may have seen this. It's just now hit the news in the last couple of weeks. It was a young man who was feeling hopeless and talking about suicide, and he was doing it on AI. And he ultimately did commit suicide, and his parents are now suing OpenAI. And the suit alleges that when this young man brought up the topic of suicide, he was told it was a beautiful idea, not to talk about it with others, methods to use, and that for the 213 times that he mentioned it, AI brought it up 1,275 times. So this is what the suit alleges. I don't know the facts, but if those are true, we're in trouble. And I think now the technology industry is looking at this seriously. Unfortunately, too late for this young man. So, what are risk factors? First of all, we know mental illness. And depression rates are strong with women, which may be why women attempt more here. Depression, high correlation with suicide. When I worked at Harris County Psychiatric Center in training many, many years ago, I was working with schizophrenics, and many of them hear voices that tell them to hurt themselves or others. And so the idea was, what do we need to do to keep them safe when they hear these voices? So mental illness can play a real part here. In addition, substance abuse. So we know that about 30 to 40% of all suicide attempts involve alcohol. And 50% of suicides are tied to alcohol and drug dependency. So it's really easier to take this action if I'm numbed out, right? I'm feeling no pain from the drugs and alcohol. And we also know that those are depressants that are going to make the depression worse, not better. Chronic pain can be a real issue. People who live with chronic pain, and it's very, very challenging to deal with, and they sometimes just feel like they can't stand it anymore. Serious medical illnesses. So you see people who are dealing with Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, different kinds of real serious illnesses that they don't want to go down this road. And sometimes that can be a reason. History of previous attempts is also an issue. So over half the women who succeed with suicide have made previous attempts. But what we also know is that if people get help, 90% of them will go on to live full and happy lives. It's getting the help. So, environmental factors that can be risks, access to lethal means. So, over half of suicides are done through guns being accessible. And we're going to talk about that more in a little bit. When you're in your darkest place and a gun's accessible, it's not a good thing. Chronic bullying that's going on in school. So, all of us got teased as kids. I think most people did experience that. Many kids got bullied even when they were young. The difference is that you could go home and be away from it. And you had people, unless the bullying was happening at home, which also can happen, but you could get away from it. Now with social media, it's hard to get away from, and it's anonymous bullying to make it worse. So really difficult issues with that. You don't even know who's posting things. Financial problems. And now 38 of our states have legalized gaming, online gambling. And what's happening, and this just happened since like 2017, all these states that are now legalizing this. And what we know is that there has been a 23% increase in gambling addiction, and that 7.3 million people have searched on the internet for help with gambling. So you combine this with, now I owe people money and I don't have it. And people, when they get financially hopeless, can then consider an option of suicide. Relationship loss, losing your beloved spouse. You see so often people who can't cope, your beloved child, and you can't cope because this person is no longer in your life. We also know that exposure to another person's suicide can increase the likelihood of someone else doing it. Social isolation and the loneliness in our country is an epidemic. the surveys on it, and it's despite all of this connection with our cell phones. People feel lonelier than ever and that they don't have anyone to talk to. Lack of access to health care, big one. People don't have money, they don't know where to go, they don't know, what would they do? They don't have the insurance or whatever. And then social media, as the young Adam Rain. History of family suicides can make you more at risk as well as childhood trauma and abuse. So, when do you know somebody could be in trouble? And it's not just teenage angst or someone old that's just, kind of muttering to themselves. If they are talking about wanting to die, we want to take it seriously. We think if we even ask the question, have you ever, they're feeling hopeless. I don't, it's just life isn't worth living anymore. It's important to ask the question, have you thought that you wanted to die? You think that bringing it up is going to plant the idea. No, it won't plant the idea. Bringing it up is critical for you to be able to get them to talk about what is actually going on with them. People who feel like they're going to be a burden to others, feelings of great guilt or shame, that hopelessness, having no reason to live. Watching people's actions, that they are actually online or researching ways to die, making a plan, they're withdrawing. You're not hearing from them anymore. No one is. They're not answering their phones. Not a good sign. They begin to give away important items. Maybe they all of a sudden are making a will or taking dangerous risks. So, speeding down the road, and if I crash into a tree, I crash into a tree. Displaying extreme mood swings. Eating or sleeping more or less, those are signs of deep depression. So they don't want to get out of bed or they're not able to sleep at all. It's different with different people. And using drugs and alcohol more often, trying to numb the pain. These can all be warning signs that we need to take seriously. So there is such a thing as what they call parasuicide. It has traditionally referred to intentional self-injury, but there's no intent to die. So somebody is cutting on themselves, or maybe they take a small amount of pills, but they know it's not enough to kill them. The risk is that they could do something that does kill them. But the psychologist from Oxford, Dr. Williams, says we should reclassify this as any non-fatal, serious, deliberate self-harm with or without suicide intent. It frequently happens in younger people, ages 15 to 44, more with women than men, but older adults are also at risk for this. And it is a sign, a cry for help. A cry for help. So, say you're noticing somebody is having these risk factors, you're noticing changes in behavior. It's important to ask, to speak up, to talk openly and non-judgmentally about what's going on with them. And then if they begin to say, I'm feeling hopeless, there's no reason to live, to ask, have you thought about hurting yourself? And really bring it out into the open. You want to listen to their feelings with empathy, and I'm going to talk about this more in a second. And you don't want to say, I'm here for you when they know that you're busy all day, every day. They they need to be able to trust that you're going to be there for them if you're going to offer support, not that it's some vacuous offer that isn't real. Because when people are at their lowest, they need others desperately. And you want to be able to connect them with resources. And again, we're going to be providing you a listing of some resources, but I saw even already online the names of some agencies in Southeast Texas that would be great people to call. And they're here with us today. So thank you for being here. You're going to need to intervene as necessary, and that's including, getting somebody picked up if they need to be and taken to safety. So when I talk about empathic listening, it's really important to know that what we're not doing is often using things that we're used to saying that we think will be helpful that aren't, okay? So when I was, for example, at the University Counseling Center of Houston, teaching there, I was in a suicide training, and we had just had somebody on the top of a building that was wanting to jump. And one of the things that you do is you don't start arguing with them about, no, you shouldn't jump. Your life is worthwhile. Why are you doing this? Instead, it's kind of paradoxical. You want to connect with them at such a deeper level that they feel like they have someone that they can connect with. So interestingly enough, in that suicide training, we were told to tell the person, you could jump later today, but right now, I really, whatever brought you up there was so difficult, so challenging, and I really want to hear about it. Would you mind just talking to me about your experience? What's going on with you in this moment? Would you mind coming down to talk to me? And then later, if you change your mind, you still have that option. But I really, really, really want to hear about what's happening for you. And they talk somebody down off a building using this. So when we hear somebody's, talking about killing themselves, sometimes what we want to do is get really preachy. Oh, you have so much to live for. You've got this and this and this and don't you know you'll go to hell if you kill yourself? Some kind of judging, blaming argument, or well, if you have this because your mother also was a depressed person. That's analyzing. That's not helpful. Or trying to humor them like, oh, yeah, I know. We all think that way. Let's go get a drink, buddy. Some kind of way that we're dismissing. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. When someone says that to you, do you feel like it's going to be okay? No. So this is kind of common ways people react because they don't know how to react to this. And in fact, what we want to do is get to the person talking where we can truly get them to talk about their feelings and needs. And all we're doing is taking it in. So you're listening to them and saying things like, wow, it sounds like you're really overwhelmed right now and wanting some relief or maybe needing some support. Is that what's happening? And they can say, yeah, I feel like I don't have support. I don't, what they can talk more if you respond this way, which is empathic listening. I'm hearing you're sad and lonely and that it's been really painful and you're isolated from your friends and you're wanting connection. Is that how you're feeling? It sounds like getting through each day is tough. Are you scared about your quality of life in the days ahead with your medical problems? And you're wanting some assurance that you're going to be okay. Anything that helps them feel heard and seen and understood. That's where we're going with that. Not these kinds of other ways of distracting or probing or judging or moralizing. And it may be coming from a good place, but this isn't helpful. It's going to make the person dig in more. It's going to be okay. If somebody says that to you, you want to say, no, it's not going to be okay. My life is really difficult right now. It is not going to be okay. You're not hearing me. That's what is going to happen on the other end. They're not going to feel heard and seen. You want to elicit discussion for them to talk about what is happening with no judgment. So we know there are protective factors. People who have access to really good health care. So I want to give a plug for Mental Health America, where I work. And we have just set up a navigation system, and somebody can input very specific information into this, and it will help them find a counselor, including some of our counselors are sliding fee scale and pro bono. So there are about 1,000 counselors now, psychologists, LPCs, social workers, CADACs, the whole bit in our system. And so you can enter the system of Care Connect and say all sorts of factors. I have Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. I think my child's on drugs. I would like a counselor that is in this area of whatever, or that will do it by remotely on a Zoom. Whatever, you can enter the factors that you need, and hopefully somebody's going to pop up. They're hoping to expand the system even more. It's going into Montgomery County and Galveston County and the entire area, as much as we can, getting information on counselors available. But people don't know who to call. I mean, it's a real issue. And they don't know about all the wonderful groups, like the groups I was seeing online as people were checking in, that are there for them. So really having that information available about these crisis centers can be so important. We also know that connection with family, friends, pets, and community. We have two major centers of the brain. First is our safety center. The whole back part of our brain is about keeping us safe and alive. And it is reacting to threats with fight, flight, or freeze. You've probably heard about this before, in an effort to help us manage and stay alive. But as part of that, and it's also connected with safety, we have huge needs for connection and belonging in this world. All of us do, because none of us can live alone. We can't survive on our own from the time we're infants. We need other people. So the more that we have community with at-risk people, and all of us, frankly, the better we are going to thrive. And that means getting off our phones and our technology and out back with each other again in social groups, hobby groups, support groups, church groups, synagogue groups, whatever groups come you've got, and encouraging others. We know this helps people feel less at risk. Life skills. The more we can teach our kids good problem solving and coping skills, and that they sense meaning and purpose in life. So it can be as simple as, helping their neighbors on a project or something, that they make a difference. Maybe it's that they're needed to take their dog on a walk every day. That's a meaning and purpose in life. My dog wouldn't be able to get out of the apartment if I weren't here to walk it. Nobody else would. That's a meaning and purpose. Connecting people to help them understand why they are important on this earth. And they are. And then also, sometimes cultural, religious, and personal beliefs against suicide can help stop people from dying by suicide. So, if somebody truly believes it's against my religion, they may not do it. But you telling them that it's in your religion and they're going to go to hell or something is not helpful. Okay, if it's in their faith and they believe that, it may be something that dissuades them long term. So, when I worked with the schizophrenics and they were telling us about the voices, the first thing we asked is, do you have a plan? How would you do it? And if someone has a plan, they are way down the road and they need professional help now. And one of the things we want to do is ask, do they have access to the means in their plan? Because it may be that, in fact, we need to engage law enforcement to come get them and take them to a safe place. If they're not willing to get rid of the lethal means, if you're in the house with them, you can say, I'm going to take all the knives, I'm going to take the guns, if that's what you're telling. So to get them out of the house, prescription pills, blocking off a balcony, making it impossible to access. It's really, really important. If somebody has a plan and they've thought about means, they are far down this road, they need help now. It's critical. We also want to get them to a professional who can help them. And what that professional would do is work with them on a safety plan. So, warning signs. When do you know you're beginning to lose it? Well, when I get all upset or when I get isolated by myself and I feel like I don't have any friends anymore, or when I don't know, hear sad music that reminds me of the person that I lost. Whatever it is that are the things that are beginning to happen that make them feel um, at risk in the moment that they might do something. We want them to be conscious of it and aware of it so that they can get away from it, get away from what is actually activating this more. And then professionals to talk to in distress, a plan for them to reduce the access to lethal means, and then often to get them to talk about. Not you, them. So tell me, if you were to do this, what would happen to your brother who's your best friend? What would happen to your pet? To get them to talk about the people, the pets, the connections that they have, and for them to say, well, I don't know, my pet relies on me, and for them to begin to see how much the pet or the person loves them. You can help them see that. I know you talk to your brother all the time and he loves you so much, and where would this leave him? Get them to talk. And then hospitalization, again, if somebody is already thinking means, it may be the right thing, that they need to be out of their environment temporarily for some really intensive help. So many of you are with organizations, or maybe you're with the media, where you are involved with suicide prevention messaging, meaning you're planning a campaign on this or to get out. We exist. We're a crisis center. We want you to know about us. So there is an organization called suicidepreventionmessaging.org that is skilled at helping you work on why you want to get this message out, to what audience are you focusing, what is the message, and then what would be the best means for it. Is it social media? Is it billboards? Is it, making presentations in schools? Is it what would be the channel to give this information? And when we're doing the messaging, we want to help people know that suicide is preventable, that it works, that people go on to live happy lives, that it is possible, that recovery is, the programs are there. We want to be able to give a positive narrative here. And the guidelines on this, if you were going to add a story attached, would be different for different media, and this organization can help you craft your messaging. But one thing that's happening often, and it's not so much the organizations that are crisis centers and that kind of thing, it's really our media. Um, well, the grisly images of yesterday's shooting were all over the news, right? Somebody was murdered yesterday, and whether you politically agree with someone or not, it's not okay to murder them. And so, having repeated images, sensational coverage of suicide, details of methods and locations. We know there can be copycat suicides and contagions. Once somebody does it, it makes it okay for somebody else sometimes to think, oh, well, he did it. And look, they're a celebrity. They're a famous person. And their life was, so great and not compared to my life, so much better. And look, they did it. All of this kind of glamorizing or the personal details, it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And frankly, our media could use some training on this because they could be causing other suicides with the way they are telling the stories. So I hope it doesn't happen to you, but what we are now calling postvention. So someone has died by suicide. And I want to just talk a little bit here now about the impact on family and communities. First of all, people grieve differently. Everybody grieves differently. There is no right way to grieve, okay? So one person, for example, may want to talk about the deceased a lot. The next person may not want to talk at all. One person might plunge into activity. Another person could be paralyzed. I mean, just not able to connect, to work, to do anything at all. And in particular, suicide can cause complicated grief because the people who remain can feel a lot of guilt, but not always, or shame. I contributed to this in some way, or I should have known. but not always. They may not always feel that. You don't know. It's different with different people, okay? So, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has a wonderful guide about practical information for immediately after a loss, the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, after a suicide, a toolkit for schools, because it affects everyone, not just family, not just close friends. It affects everyone, and schools need to have a plan for what will happen. It's good to have it in advance, not to be waiting until this happens and then struggling to immediately come up with a plan. School districts, they need to have thought this through, and particularly when it could happen on a school campus. I mean, it is possible. I also wanted to end with how to react respectfully to suicide. So it is not at all helpful for you to probe. How did they do it? That's voyeuristic. Of what benefit would that question be to the person who is grieving? To talk about the gory details. It's not a helpful question. They may choose to tell you, and it's their choice to bring it up. But for you to probe around, how did you find them? Whatever, all the details, you leave that to them, and how much or how little they want to disclose. When it's on high profile person, it's not helpful to share it more on social media and public spaces. It's not helpful to bring it up. It's already splashed across the media.
Yeah.
It's just not helpful. Never offer platitudes. What do I mean by that? Oh, he's in a better place now. He's not suffering. Something like that is not helpful to the person who is still around, who remains. And it's okay not to know what to say. It's okay. You know, you can say, I'm here for you, or I care about you, or I feel sad, and just leave it at that. I also will tell you that oftentimes people who experience suicide are so, because sadness and grief usually drain our energy. They are so without energy at the shock of what's happened that literally trying to figure out if you bring over a casserole, how to cook it or something is too hard. That there's no energy for anything until there is again. Until there is again. So survivors of suicide often need support and counseling, right? Because it's heavy duty. But if you're trying to be helpful, dropping off food is great. Keep it really simple. Something that's pretty edible right away, or that can hold in the fridge, or something cold or something like that that doesn't require much. Because oftentimes families just don't have the energy. So they asked me to speak for about 50 minutes, and I've covered a lot here. And I wanted to now open it up to questions and comments. Happy to address anything, or if some of the folks online want to talk about their services even and what's available through them to educate those others online. How can I help?
And your presentation was just phenomenal. And I'm so glad it's recorded because we're hoping to share it for those who could not attend today. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask or post it in the chat. I have one while they're thinking. Um, the statistics are so scary. Um, and I know you talked a lot about isolation and this the cell phone use for children. So what do you do in a situation and where you have, I mean, not everyone is super social, right? We all have different levels of, some people are just tend to be more isolated naturally. But I feel like from what I've seen, if you have a person that may be more introverted naturally, but then they have a cell phone and a device, they would just become more introverted, right? I mean, that just allows them to connect less. Like, what do you do? Like, how do you force? I mean, do you force, and whether it's a teenager or an adult, into social situations, like as a parent or as a friend? I mean, I know you can encourage to a certain extent, but that 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 time together is so important. I'm just curious if you have any advice on that.
Yeah, I think you want to invite people. And what you want to do is say to them things like, I'm noticing that you're spending more time in your bedroom, and we used to occasionally, go on walks together or do this together, and we're not doing that anymore. And I really miss our connection. You are important in my life, and I really want to spend time with you. Would you be willing to, take a walk with me after school before you go into your bedroom? Something very specific. Would you be willing to watch a funny movie with me? Or just, it may be, some kids share more than others, and some kids don't want to share a lot, and particularly when they get to the teenage years, a lot of them, it's how was school? Fine. What'd you do today? Oh, school, homework, one word answers, and you don't get too far. But just spending time, saying, can we go out and throw a frisbee with the dog? Just anything that you can think of to engage them briefly and encourage them. It would mean a lot to me if you would spend this time.
That's great advice. Does anyone else have any questions for Anne, either in the chat box that we can ask, or just now?
Kim, I'd like to just thank Ann, this Regina, for doing an outstanding presentation, knowing her as long and as well as I do, and considering a treasured friend. Ann, you're amazing as always. And I particularly like the fact that you always emphasize empathic discussion. That is so important, as we know, but you're really the leader in that area as far as mindfulness and focusing on the needs of others and not so much our own, but how we treat others in a compassionate, loving, and empathetic way. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing this today, and we treasure you and love you. Thanks.
Thank you, Regina. I will say that I teach what I needed to learn myself and what's helped me. I'm happy to share it.
We appreciate you so very much.
Other comments and questions? Do any of the participants online want to just give a plug for your crisis center? I saw some were suicide oriented.
And I'm looking at the chat real quick to see if there's any questions. And it looks like there was an individual who stated that they've dealt with a lot of students saying how they are not wanting to live out of frustration. We get a lot of this in the schools. I know that our students are so frustrated and again so isolated. And I don't, and again, I'm not an expert in part, probably due to the social media. They probably don't think they're isolated. They think they're more connected. I'm curious if there's any education on that for the kids themselves. Like, I mean, at that age, helping them understand that they need real connection outside of of their phone connection. Do you know of any kind of educational platform for the kids themselves?
Um, So I don't know of an educational platform. There needs to be one. I will say that a lot of schools are bringing in mental health talks to youth and talking. This is part of the discussion because I've done the talks at schools, talking about the fact that it's not the same and helping them understand what's going on through social media. So one of the things, and we know that boys are mostly hooked on gaming. So they're not looking at all of the comparison of this influencer and that kind of person. And that is where the real issues are coming in with increases of anxiety and depression, with people posting their best lives and not the true moments where they're feeling at their lowest. And so our mind is very much a comparing mind, which is one of the things that we teach people in mindfulness to let go of. You're not meant to be the other person, you're meant to be you. And and so to stop that comparing mind and know that what they're looking at is an airbrushed person that's only posting a happy moment and not their sad moments. So really talking to kids about this is very, very important. And I know some schools are doing it.
And obviously, parents need to do the same. Um,
Yes,
Yeah, it's so it is. It's such a heavy topic, and you did such a beautiful job. And I do think when you started out saying that there was hope, and that there, you know, that there you can have a and I don't know what your words were, but you can have a life after you've dealt with these situations, and that getting the help. Is just key. I mean, there is help, there is treatment, there is medication and therapy and all the
yes,
things. And that is, you know, that I think that's just so important to remember.
yes,
And can,
yes,
yeah, Bernice, I am hoping that our new law banning the cell phones in schools will promote those kinds of connections. I remember growing up, lunchtime, I mean, we got to talk to each other after school. I mean, all that. So I am really hoping that instead of on being on your cell phone at lunch and down the hall, that this will promote some social connections among our children because they'll walk down the hall together and talk to each other. They'll sit in the lunchroom and instead of being on their phones, they will talk to each other. Um, any other thoughts about that? And I'm
I'm
hoping,
with you all the way on it. I'm with you all the way on that. I think we have to relearn, and particularly this group that was grew up under COVID, so they were away even more isolated, right? Because they were out of school for years with couple years with COVID, and so they really don't know how to communicate in person. And there's a huge need for those phones to be put away, and I think it's good that districts are doing it. Yeah. We have to learn how to relate one on one again.
yes.
It's very, very critical.
Well, Anne, thank you for sending us the resources. I received that email and I will share that with this group. I will be sending out, everyone that registered for this event will be receiving an email, a follow-up email. We're going to ask some of the providers to gather in a couple of weeks in person to talk about local resources to share, to see where the gaps may be in services or how we can advocate, get the word out for the existing services here. That's kind of, you know, we're kind of seeing ourselves as the connector here in Southeast Texas. So everyone be looking out for that. And I did put in the chat our email if anyone didn't register and just wants to email to connect with us. So thank you, Anne, for your presentation, and thank you. It was just really so fabulous, and I hope you're okay with us sharing it and following up possibly with any questions.
Anytime, you all feel free to contact me, and I'm so glad you're going to sort of bring the groups together so that you can look at your safety net and what areas, you might be missing services, or how people can sort of collaborate more in getting the word out, maybe do some group messaging. I mean,
Right.
suicide is real, and it doesn't have to be. Help is there. We need to get people to the help. And it can be a game changer. That person can have a long, full, happy life.
Well, your navigation system that you all are working on sounds incredible. So we're eager to learn more about that. And we appreciate the partnership with MHA of Greater Houston and your support and their support. So thank you so much. And we will be in touch with everyone who logged on today. And we'll share the presentation and we'll share the notes. And again, thank you, Anne. We're just so grateful for your time on such.
Grateful for all you do.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you,
Thank
everyone
you.
that signed on. We'll be in touch. Have a
Bye
wonderful
bye,
day.
everyone.
Bye.
All right, thank you.